Hey everyone, welcome in. Betsperts Golf here for your first look at the 2025 Farmers Insurance Open, Torrey Pines. Hope everyone's doing well on this beautiful day. Excited to talk about Torrey Pines. This is an interesting event. This course gets discussed a lot in the architect circles out there because it's a absolutely gorgeous backdrop for golf. The cliffs of La Jolla, with the Pacific Ocean coming in. It's just a very aesthetically pleasing event to watch. So your, golf course architecture aficionados will tell you that it is a pretty boring, straightforward golf course, and I understand that. It is not incredibly nuanced, but again, part of it for me at this time of year, I'm in the Midwest. Don't get a lot of golf. I'm negative 2 degrees in Chicago today. So I like seeing nice Pacific cliffs on the screen in January, and we'll take it from there. Key stuff at the top. This is a unique event because we did this a couple years ago. Shout out to the PGA Tour for staying with it. It's really smart thing for them to do. This is a Wednesday to Saturday event. They wisely want nothing to do with anything that's going on NFL related on a Sunday, right? The NFL Sunday, they want to get in front of that freight train. So golf starts early. It is Wednesday. So betting cards, got to get them in sooner. DFS lineups, if you're waiting until Wednesday night, typically you're behind. You got to get in earlier this week. So that's a reminder to folks. Again, you probably know that if you're watching the show on a Monday morning, but just a reminder again, earlier than normal here. A little bit different than last week. Last week was fun. I don't know. Shout out to me. I landed on SEP last week, 75. Touched on it a little bit on the Tuesday show with Andy. Took a couple of shots in the 70 range. Used the rabbit hole and navigated. SEP's not a guy I typically bet on, but found him in looking at the rabbit hole, looking at strokes gained approach on short and very short golf courses, which all three of the courses in the mix last week were. POA Triv, best putting surface for SEP as well. So I thought 75, the class of golfer he was probably a little bit too long. And we got home. I think 60. I saw some 60s out there on SEP. I think that was probably still a decent price. Obviously, in hindsight, it was, but I think 60 was probably a good number for SEP as well. So we have another multi-course event this week, though a little different. The South course is the main course that we're playing this week. It'll host 3 of the 4 rounds if you're to make the cut. This is the course most people think about when they think about Torrey Pines. There are rumors that this might be the host course again in 2 weeks when we come back for the Genesis, which obviously has been impacted by the wildfires of California. So I think we might be coming back to Torrey South in the next couple of weeks for the Genesis, but we'll find out more probably this week on that. But yeah, the South is a big boy golf course. It is the longest track on the PGA Tour. Thin fairways, thick rough, and it creates a lot of the same golf shots, which again, part of what I was talking on the top, where people have maybe some challenges with this course and what is asked of the golfers, but stretching out to a little over 7,700 from the tips, and they grow the rough out. So in the past, it's been 3.5 inches. Could be it. Looking at 4-inch rough here. So driving distance matters. Greens are a little bit on the smaller side. I can show some of this stuff to you guys as well using Ron's course preview, which is already up on the site. If you want to dig into all the details for subscribers, you can go ahead and do that. And I think it'll help you get an understanding of how you want to start to use the data in the rabbit hole to filter some of this stuff out. But I'll show you some of the course facts here. All right, you can see Torrey South. Again, 3 of the 4. You really got to make your hay on the North course. If you don't take advantage of one of your, the opening round or the second round and pile up some birdies on the North course, it's really hard to win here. You can see here, par 72, 77, 65 from the tips. William Bell, Reese Jones combo This is Reese Jones been brought in, a handful of years ago to get it ready for major championship golf, which, a PGA, a US Open. They love long, narrow, with thick rough. And that's what we have here. You can see as well, fifth smallest greens on tour, POA, actual true California POA greens. Whereas again, last week, POA Triv overseeded. These are your standard California POA greens. You can see the rough 4 inches of overseed, ryegrass, thick. You got to get the ball down there. You can see too, average fairway width, fifth most narrow on tour. The average fairway width at 28 yards. So again, some pretty common things that you're hearing here. Distance is going to matter. You're going to have long irons at a higher rate. You're probably going to have to maybe scramble a little bit more. It's a little bit harder to, because again, your proximity is a little bit further out. Your, average approach shots from further out, and we have smaller greens, right? So those things are going to matter a little bit here as well. Water not really necessarily in play. Outside of like 18, if you decide you wanted to go for it, but I'll show you too, going for the green right here is a little bit lower. A lot of these par fives even are 3-shot holes for a lot of these guys. So let's dig into some of that. I'll show you the odds here real quick before we jump into it. This is a weaker than average Torrey Pines stop. Few things going on here. I mean, we have a lot of live guys that used to come here that obviously not in the mix anymore. This is always a big Tiger event. Obviously, we're in a different season of professional golf. Xander, typically, San Diego kid, almost always here. He's dealing with an ailment of some sort. The PGA, again, coming from, football side of things, to do a lot of football stuff as well. The injury reporting on the NFL side is pretty good, right? We get practice reports. We get, for the most part, details on what's going on with guys. The injury reporting in the PGA Tour, that's how we run into, post-lock, WDs, and you have no idea what happened to a guy. We had Michael Thor Bjornsson withdraw with an illness a couple weeks ago. Turns out it was tonsillitis. Like, we just never get any of that reporting. So we don't know what's going on specifically with Xander. He's not here. Colin Morikawa, another Southern California kid who's usually here, usually plays well, not here. Patrick Cantley, usually California kid, usually here. He's got a TGL event going on Tuesday. So, it's just a really weird dynamic where, the top of the board here isn't as strong as it's been in years past. And it's more the secondary, I guess, of the board that you can start to see a real dip in. But there's been movement at the top early with Hideki and Ludwig, your shortest odds here using FanDuel. There were some 11s, even a 12 late last night on Ludwig. It's got some action this morning, you could see. And then a gap between those two down to Sanjay. I know burned people pretty severely last week. They moved to the tournament favorite there, and they missed the cut, which is tough to see. Finau, Keegan, Gracerman, Zalatoris, Jason Day, who's in the mix, has played well here in the past winner here. See 28 down him. Thigala, Matt McNeely, Shane Lowry, Taylor Pendrith, Kurt Kitayama, Max Homa, Luke Clanton, Akshay, who's coming over from Dubai, Siwoo, Aaron Rai. So this is kind of where you're fifth, short of 50. So, it's not a bad range of 50 or shorter, but again, not what we typically see here, where you would, again, these odds start to look very different if, Xander and Cantley are in the field, if Morikawa is in the field, then you got 5 legit, studs kind of really at the very, very top of that board, and it shifts things a little bit here. So we had a bomb here last year. Obviously, Matthew Pavon won here. At top of the leaderboard was very interesting. It was, a bunch of long shots, really, with Steven Yeager and Thomas Dietrich and all the longer shots there showing up and popping there last year. So definitely an interesting odds board to get started. And Let's dig into a little bit more of the course details here. I'm going to show you some of the stuff here. Before we dig in the rabbit hole, let's go through and let's look at the course preview sheet here. So we're going to look at the South course. We don't have shot lane data on the North course. Playing, it's about 72 and change. They've, again, grown the rough out there a little bit more. Those are kind of a hybrid green where it's not strictly POA. I think they're listed as bent, and I do think you kind of have a little bit of a hybrid action going on there. But again, it is an easier setup, obviously, where you've looked here. Ron notes in his preview, the winner of this event is averaging like 5.5 strokes under par on the North course during their one round there. So again, you're talking about an outlier. We're talking about the winner, relative to par. It's about like, minus 1.8 or so. So definitely easier, almost 2 full shots easier than the South course. So you really got to take advantage of your round over there. But if you want to look at the breakdown of the holes here, again, on the South, you get a sense of, birdie rates. You can see a tough stretch here in the back, 12 to 15 playing very difficult. You're seeing 12 with a bogey rate of 33.6%, pretty hefty. You can see here, same thing, 18, tough finish here down the stretch. Let's look at some of the course metrics. I think this is a great place to start your research every week so you can get a sense of what do I need to look at data-wise in the rabbit hole. So you can see here off the tee, average PGA Tour stop driving distance-wise, tick over 290. We're out over 293 here over the past 5 years. You can see driver usage about 10% higher than a standard PGA Tour event. So we consider this driver heavy off the tee. You can see something interesting here. A lot of it was tied to, you can see some of these 2 years. It's very interesting, this mix. This drives of 300 plus being significantly less than a tour average event, even though, we have more drivers than normal. Part of it is the rough. You're not going to get a lot of run up because 4 inches of rough, that ball's kind of dying, right? You're not getting some of that run out even through the fairways. Part of it last year was really, really soft conditions. You can see that here with a less than 4% of drives went 320 plus yards, considering that you had, almost 78% driver usage, right? That doesn't make sense other than wet course in the rough. You're not getting any rollout. Especially, even if you hit it in the fairway, you weren't getting much rollout because it was playing so wet. A little bit drier this year. They have not been getting a lot of rain. Could have some wind this week. So we'll have to watch that as we get closer. That could play. Obviously, we're on the cliffs of the Pacific Ocean. That can definitely play into things here. And again, you're getting that headwind in your face. That's going to knock the drive down as well. You can see a lower than average driving accuracy rates. Again, narrow fairways. But guys are still ripping driver here because, again, lofted wedge from the rough probably better for a lot of these guys than hanging back and taking less than driver and giving yourself 200 plus, 250 plus consistently on your second shot. You can see if you want to get into the weeds on specific rough tendency, but again, looking at this page, we know that it's driver heavy, and that maybe carry distance is probably a better way to go about things than maybe just driving distance. We do have carry distance in the rabbit hole. We have club head speed, we have ball speed as well, and I think that's something that matters a lot here as well. Approach. Look at this here a little bit. Pretty much across the board and everything we see, it's just a little bit harder than the PGA Tour average event across the board, right? There's no massive jumps in anything, but it's all just a little bit harder. Greens and reg a little bit lower. Greens and reg from the fairway actually a little bit better, which is interesting. You can see here proximities. All this is just pretty close to a PGA Tour average standard spot. If you look at approach shot distribution, you want to get into the weeds on yardage here. You can see the average approach shot a little bit longer. And part of that is you have to think through this a little bit. Part of that is driven by the fact that a lot of these par fives are 3-shot holes. So yes, you have instances where, you get a lot of 200 plus and a lot of longer irons here. But you do have a fairly standard amount of short irons and wedges because some of these par fives are going to have to, be 3-shot holes for a lot of the field. So that's a little bit confusing for folks if you look at this, but that's why, because that's being held back by that number as well. So this is why it gets really tricky to add approach shot distribution ranges to the rabbit hole model, in my opinion, because it's not going to be the same for every golfer. So if I'm like putting them all in a model and all weighing them equally, then I'm basically saying that I expect both of these players to shoot a similar amount of shots from that range. That's not often the case. So I think it can get a little bit noisy there. So it's not something that I really like to do. And you can see, I don't know if there's anything that jumps out a ton in, approach shot distribution. That means you need to be prioritizing that over other stuff. I think there's a better way to do it. And I'll show you how to do that here this morning. You can see here, everything here, when you get into the longer stuff, the 175, 200 plus, most of them are all just a little bit more than a PGA Tour average event. As you can see here, fairway 200 plus, about 3% higher. Overall, 200 plus, fairway and rough, same thing, about 3.2% higher. It's not anything that I'm like going out of my way to really prioritize as it pertains to the distribution buckets. Again, I'll show you a different way that I think matters. It's a great way to go through and do this. You can get all of those proximity ranges. Look around the green here. Again, it's going to matter a little bit because you're going to miss some greens with your approach shots being further out and these being smaller greens, but it's not anything that is problematic or anything that you need to go out of your way to prioritize. Look at putting here. Again, all of it's just a little bit harder. Higher 3-putt rate for sure. Higher 3-putt rate from 25 plus. That could be just these bumpy POA. I can get in your head a little bit. Lower 1-putt rate. So all of these things are, again, just a little bit harder. If we look at the par scoring per hole, again, par 3s right around tour average. Par 4s right around tour average. Par 5s, again, just all of them a tick above a PGA Tour average event. Nothing that's crazy. We'll go into the tournament cheat sheet. If you want to look at a combination of things here, you're going to go into tools. This is a tournament cheat sheet. Get a few things here. You get just recent metrics. And again, I can mess around with the time frame here, similar to what we do in the rabbit hole. Again, I don't have all the filtering, but just some of the key basic metrics that you can take a look at here if you want to get a sense of who's playing well as of late. Then you can move in here and look at recent form. So this would be all courses, just how they've played in the last handful of events. And then you can get into course history here as well, how they have played. There's something to be said for decent course history here. Being familiar with this track, you can see Hideki on the screen. Has played here often, an annual tour stop for Hideki with a handful of strong finishes. You can see Ludovic here, T9 in his debut. Matt McNeely, SoCal kid. He comes here every year. He's done pretty well. You can see Aaron Rye, some decent finishes, made the cut all 3 stops. Same thing for Pendrith. Finau, he's coming here every year. If you need a top 10, Tony Finau seems to be pretty solid lead. Pretty consistently in the mix here. You can see Harry Hall. You would think probably be a pretty decent Harry Hall course because he can hit it out there pretty far. Not had success here. Sanjay, mixed bag here. So again, this is just another tool if you want quick glance. If this is your thing, you like course history. Again, Jason Day, we've seen here coming every year. Multiple top 10s, including a win back in 2018. You want to dig into to this, you can. Rabbit hole is the better way to do it. Obviously, you can get even more granular for sure. So let's take a look. I want to show you some of the things that I did today for my model for this event. I bet 3 guys already this morning. Will probably be the total of my card. Really, I don't have, based off of the way that I bet outrights, I don't have room for anyone else because of the way I went about things this morning. So we'll take a look. Let's take a look at some of the stuff I did. All right. If you're seeing the rabbit hole here for the first time, First of all, thanks for hanging out with us. Subscribe to the channel, Betsperts Golf here on YouTube, Betsperts Golf wherever you listen to podcasts. These are obviously better YouTube shows than podcasts because I am sharing the screen. I am talking about things that I'm looking at the screen. So I apologize, podcast listeners. This is a little bit harder. But again, come back and check out the YouTube page. You can do any sort of condition filtering you can imagine here. And I think there's a couple different ways to go about it. So actually I want to show you guys here. I'm just going to show you my model. We'll walk through it this way. This is the model that I have built for this event. And you want to see the specific stats and what we did. You can click into the icon feature here as well, because you can see here strokes gained total. These are all a little bit different. So what we're looking at here, strokes gained total over the last 2 years on long and very long golf courses with long rough. That's a little bit more overfitting than I typically like to do, but I backed up to 2 years to give myself a decent sample size. And I think it is something that really, really matters here. And you can see I gave it a pretty decent rate. I also did the same thing, basically double counting it a little bit. I went just long and very long. So I took out the long rough piece and gave that a smaller percentage. But really, I just want to get a sense of who's played well on long and very long golf courses over a decent sample size. And again, I went back out to 2 years because, you know, I think you really need, say, just in general, a rule of thumb is like at least 30, 35 rounds played, in my opinion, for a sample to be relevant. At this time of year, you can just want to look at recent form. If you just want to look at, all right, 2025, who's played well, I get it. In that instance where I'm kind of okay with a smaller sample if you just wanted to look at it, right? Because you're just going to get no rounds for these guys. So just who's played in 2025 and leads in strokes gained total. Hideki, Alex Smalley, Justin Lauer, Harry Hall, JJ Spawn, Sanjay, Trey Mullinex, Mark Hubbard, Ben Griffin, Bo Hostler. Those are your top guys, right? So you just want to do that. Again, super small sample here. You can see this is 8 rounds for Hideki. It's lit up because if I want to see what those rounds are, I can click into it too. If you wanted to get out some of the small sample stuff, you can go into here and add a minimum round feature. Again, I wouldn't do that in this sample, but in general, you could do that. So typically I want a bigger sample, guys. This is not really going to do it for me. So let's go ahead and look at it. I want to show you what this spits out. Something I prioritized this week. Long, very long, with long rough. So I'll back up my sample to 2 years. I think you can see you can go up to 5 years if you wanted to. Part of that's going to be tough because you're going to get really massively different sample sizes for guys, especially with some of the young guys. But let's back out to course length, long and very long, because I want to filter out short golf courses. I don't want any of the data that's coming in from what happens last week, at the American Express, because that's not the demand of what is on tap for these guys this week. So it's not super useful for me to take a look at rolling 36 months or 36 rounds of strokes gain data, because some guys are going to be pulling data from July, August and July from late last year. And those courses are all very different. So there's something to be said for that stuff when we get into the season, more reps, more rounds for a lot of these guys. But I think looking at what the actual demand of the course is why the rabbit hole is as useful as it is. And again, something that led me to SEP last week. So let's look at long, very long, and then I'm going to go to rough, length, and long as well. You could also do long and average if you wanted to basically siphon out any of the short rough stuff. But I just want to look at long specifically because I think we get a big enough sample size on 2 years. All right, let's see here. Strokes gained total, long and very long golf courses with long rough over the last 2 years. You can see this is kind of the range I was talking about from a sample size standpoint. You can see a tie there if we rank it out. Let's go into average. So average strokes gained per round, long, very long golf courses, long rough over the last 2 years. Again, small sample, but Nate Lashley. You can see. We're going to put on a minimum round feature to get some of these guys out. 4 rounds is just not going to cut it. I want a bigger sample for these guys. Hideki at the top. Yeah, not super surprising. Again, we looked at that course history sheet. He's played really, really, really well. Some other guys, normal sample sizes. Ludwig second, Thomas Dietrich third. Probably surprising to see that for a lot of people. Dietrich playing good golf in California, plays nice on long courses. Max Homa, a winner here in the past. Shane Lowry has more carry distance than you would expect. Kevin Yu played well here in the past, winner in the swing season. Model darling Doug Gim, Keegan Bradley, Tony Finau, Joseph Bramlett, Harris English, Saith Thigala, Will Zalatoris. So these are long and very long. Mixed sample, but let's do this again, and let's take out just the long rough and just look at long, very long golf courses. We're going to get a better sample here for these guys. And again, you can see I put both of these individually in my model and weigh them, about a fifth of the model. So again, Hideki, Ludwig, Max, Dietrich, Akshay, Finau, Lowry, M, Johnny Vegas, Keegs, Doug Gim again. So again, real solid sample size for most of these guys, upwards of, 80 rounds, 60 rounds. Ludwig is going to be dealing with smaller sample for Ludwig still, but again, 46 rounds, long golf courses, very long golf courses. You can see here what they're doing in that. And I think it matters a ton. So I did something similar when the scoring conditions are difficult and very difficult. Because again, I think we have that here as well. You can see winner here, typically low teens. You can have a nice day on the north course, but south course typically, playing pretty much to even par, a little bit harder. So let's go into the conditions section. I'm going to flip this off. I wouldn't overfit this. So what I'm saying is I wouldn't do very difficult, long, very long, because you're kind of going to get that in. Typically your scoring conditions these are going to be similar. But again, you could be getting a little bit of a noisy sample size. You'd have to back out, I think, to a very, very large sample. So I typically don't like to do, more than what we did there when we did the length and the rough. That's kind of the most I'll do all at once. You start to, you'll get some people say, hey, I'm not getting anything in this data. I did long, very long, difficult, very difficult on POA greens with thick rough, and the field size, I did West Coast golf, and it's like, yeah, you're not going to get a large sample. You're definitely looking at too many things all at once. If you want to do all those things, look at them, but I would compartmentalize those and do them differently. So let's look at difficult, very difficult scoring conditions last 2 years. You're going to get some similar names, but I think it's okay because I think there's something to be said for the demand of what we're looking for this week. So you see pretty large sample. Most of these guys around 80, 90 rounds. Again, some different order, but a lot of the same names. Again, Decky at the top, Ludwig second there, Max Homa, Shane Lowry, Sanjay M, Tony Finau, Siwoo Kim, Keegan Bradley, Harris English, Jason Day, Nate Lashley, Akshay Bhatia. Some others that are kind of, we've seen, they've all been kind of right there too. You can see Zalatoris, Dietrich again, Aaron Rye, Justin Rose, past winner here, Bramlett again, Thigala, Jaeger again, contended here last year. Matt Meisner is playing really good golf. Again, Matt McNeely. So again, like you're top of the board here, at top tier. I mean, you're seeing a lot of commonalities in some of these really important metrics this week. All right, what else did I do? I looked at ball striking on long and very long, which I think, again, taking out some of the putting noise, taking out some of the around the green noise, I think that makes sense as well. So I did a couple of things you can do. You can do approach on long and very long too. You can also do approach long and very long with small greens. Because I think that's really what we want to see here as well. I don't really want to get a sense of how guys play when the greens are massive. Looking at proximity then doesn't really matter. It's a lot safer. What happens when we approach numbers on smaller greens with long and very long golf courses? Again, a bigger thing that I would typically do in the rabbit hole. I don't typically mess around with a lot of those things at the same time, but I think it is telling this week. And if we back out, I think we can get a pretty decent sample size. So let's go back to long, very long. And I want to look at green size, small. You can do small and average. Again, taking out the large greens. But let's see what our sample size is with small greens, long, very long. Let me show you this first. Let's just do no green size. I want to show you long, very long ball striking, which I had in there too just before I turn on the green size small. I'm still in the 2 years. Again, I'm willing to mess around with that to make sure that I get a sample that I like. But I like having a large sample like this. But look at the ball striking in this instance. You could see the bright red putting for these guys that they have struggled with in these instances because these are typically not great putters. There's a reason Tony Finau is constantly in the top 10 but not winning, especially here. But your top ball strikers on long and very long golf courses over the last 2 years, Johnny Vegas, Gary Woodland, massive length, playing really good golf right now. Great story. Tony Finau, Hideki Matsuyama, Doug Gim, Kevin Yu, Alex Smalley, Ludwig. You can see Ludwig, the highest ranking ball striker, who's also positive putting. That's probably good. Berger, Kitayama, Homa, your next guy that is positive putting and positive ball striking in this mix. Next guy you want to find in that mix is Shane Lowry. So again, this is something I did. This is just telling us, again, ball striking, getting a sense of really what you're doing with those first two shots. If you want to look at approach on long, very long golf courses, this is also, to me, a better way to capture the longer proximity ranges this week versus getting into the buckets specifically on stuff, because I think that's a little bit noisy. So similar names to the ball striking here. You can see Putnam struggling off the tee, but approach solid on this long and very long golf courses. Johnny Vegas, Hideki, Woodland, Finau, Charlie Hoffman, Max Homa, JJ Spawn. You can see some of their names that are popping, maybe not as strong off the tee, but you see some good approach stuff from them. You see Sam Ryder showed up here well a couple years back. Your approach game is nice, but the rest of it is struggle bus a little bit. Let's go back in. We'll look at this. Same lens, long, very long, but I want to look at these smaller greens and see what my sample is for this. Again, probably looking to get at least 30 to 40 rounds. Let's see what the rabbit hole tells us. Smaller sample, 20 rounds for a lot of these guys. But let's just take a look here. And again, you can click in to see what it is. Finau at the top by margin, which is always interesting to see. This is why I like looking at the average versus rank. You can see Finau, small greens, long golf courses, really lapping the field and approach. Kitayama, Urayu, is a lot of upside for this young Japanese guy. Is, again, small sample, but I think the profile is pretty nice. You can see we're still looking at last week's down the board DK prices. This will update if you're wondering what this is. This is your DraftKings salaries from last week. We do not have DraftKings salaries as of now for the farmers. Ludwig here, Lee Hodges, Nick Hardy, Matthew Pavon, Thigala, Bramlett, Decky, Rose, Bhatia, Keegs. So again, some commonalities in this mix, which I think is pretty interesting to see. All right, what else did I have in my model I think I want to show you guys? Off the tee, driver heavy. We'll do that. I'm not going to go all through everything, but I think off the tee, driver heavy, ball striking matters. I'm going to take off the course length. I'm going to take off the small greens. I'm going to go down to off the tee club, driver heavy, because you saw about 10% higher than the tour average. Guys are hitting driver. So this is probably maybe even too big of a sample. Yeah, we're getting a lot of sample for these guys. 2 years. So let's go down to a year. Let's see a little bit of a smaller sample. You get strokes gained, average when the club is driver heavy. So you want to look at specifically off the tee in this instance. Not surprised to see Luke Clanton at the top of that list. Again, small sample, but the kid hits piss missiles and they are straight. That tends to play pretty well anywhere. Toasty, good for you. I mean, Toasty hits bombs. Ludwig, Fishburne, Johnny Vegas, Rico Hoey, Max McGreevy, small sample, Thigala, McNeely, Bramlett, Berger, Finau. Berger getting it done with accuracy, not a big bomber off the tee. I like to also look at ball striking here because I want to think about the drive setting up the second shot too, just to see if there's anyone else. Again, Clanton at the top still. Small sample again for Clanton, which I think matters. But again, he's really good. Doug Gim, Johnny Vegas, Ludwig, Max McGreevy, Finau, Kitayama, Hideki, Thor. Small sample for Thor as well. Spawn, Siwoo, Berger. All right. Interesting. And again, I think it matters to take a look at this. We want to get a sense of, driver heavy. It matters a ton this week. Now, I think we're going to get a firmer golf course than we had last year. We saw the lack of 320 plus drives because I think carry distance matters here because you're not getting roll out from the rough. Excuse me. So I want to show you can look at driving distance. We have that obviously off the tee. You see, who's gaining. We just looked at off the tee. But you can get, accuracy, you can get total driving. But you can look at carry distance as well. I always like to look at the gap between carry distance and driving distance too, because again, part of that can be your spin rollout. There's obviously some link to it. You can see a lot of guys here in driving distance are also green and carry distance, but you can look at the opposite and see some guys that aren't getting quite as much carry or, really don't depend on rollout quite as much. So you can see Thor at the top of carry distance, Mullinex, Woodland, Bramlett, Pendrith, Kitayama, Haynes Springer, Pearson Cootie, Sam Stevens, Gotterup, Matty Schmidt, Ludwig, Clanton, Jaeger, Norman, List. Again, not super surprising to see some of these names at the very, very top. Bramlett is, I'd say, a average to below average, but probably slightly below average PGA Tour golfer. Continues to show up here and have pretty good results. Right? These are leading indicators of predictive stats for this event. This is kind of my point, right? So if you search by driving distance, fine as well. People are going to be on driving distance this week. But you can see Grayserman here, 4th in driving distance, 41st in carry distance. So that's fine. 41st in carry distance isn't a problem, but I think it tells a better story than what you would get just by looking at driving distance, right? We're trying to use this to land on winners or, player pool. So obviously Grayserman is an above average distance guy off the tee, but maybe not as much as it pertains to what Torrey is going to demand with these guys, considering the thick rough, considering how the conditions could play sometimes. So I just think it's an interesting situation to look at. You can see some guys that are at the top of both, like Ludwig, Mullinex, Bramlett, Gotterup, Pendrith. Toasty's another guy, right? Top in distance, carry distance 21st. Again, hits the ball very far, but not quite the same story as what the driving distance numbers are, right? So I use carry distance this week because I think through this rough it matters quite a bit. Another thing that you can do if you want to really get into the weeds on it is club head speed, ball speed. These are metrics that we have that you can model, that you can put in. You want to look at club head speed. That matters on situations where, again, I'm looking at driver heavy still. But if you wanted to say, hey, I need that club head speed to get through that thick rough, this is obviously being measured off the tee, but I think there's something to be said for some correlation there. Same thing for ball speed. This is a list of guys that hit the ball very long. So there's something to be said for that as well. See, I put it here too. Distance from the edge of the fairway. Again, I will continue to go to bat for distance from the edge of the fairway being a far superior stat than driving accuracy. Accuracy, you saw it below tour average here. I think it matters, but I don't think it's a massive thing. Again, distance can really impact that in a way that kind of mitigates that. So if you're hanging back a little bit, you need to be playing from the fairway. And this is just a better indicator than a binary yes, no, are you in the fairway? This tells us more about, you could be in that first cut and basically score no on accurate. But it's a better indicator of, how far off you are. Basically your, dispersion off the tee. It's giving you a better indicator. These are also fast greens and POA greens. You see, I have both of these captured here as well. So I'll show you guys this. We'll do it again. We'll rerun it. This will be Monday first look. Just me today. Ron's dealing with some dad duties. We've all been there. Unless you don't have kids, then you've never been there. And take your time. Have kids when you're ready. All right, save and generate model. Let's see what it spits out. I think I know the top two guys. Really should know probably the top 20. Just a matter of figuring out what order they're in. You saw some commonalities throughout. All right. Ludwig at the top of the betting odds, just like Hideki, and they are 1-2 in the model. Doesn't always happen. Ben Griffin was top of my model last week, and he was 70-1. I obviously bet him. Sepp was the top 10 in my model. But you can see here, Ludwig, Hideki, Homa, Finau, Bramlett, top 5 in the model. And I am not using any course history in this model. Just the skills that lead to the results at the course have led us to Joseph Bramlett 5th in the model. I think it's important to show that because we're, when I get that in the model, it tells me that I think we did some good things here. I think there is some predictiveness to the model. We've seen guys, especially of Joseph Bramlett's caliber, that are not top tier that land high in the model. Thigala, Gim, Lowry, Sanjay, Dietrich round out the top 10. Akshay, Luke Clanton round out the top 12. It's a really solid top 12. No real surprises to me other than maybe Bramlett or how high Bramlett is. But again, you kind of even go down to the top 24 or so here. Woodland's in there. Aaron Wright's played well here, limited. But again, he's going to find the fairway, and that helps him. Good on long approaches. Matt McNeely, Stephen Yeager, Zalatoris has obviously been in the mix here. Choked that tough, painful a loss to Luke List here a couple years ago. Springer, we saw long off the tee. Vegas, Pendrith, nice finishes here. Keegs. So I think a solid top of the board model. You can see here, if we just look at what we looked at, this is, again, you can look at the little indicator here to get an idea of what this is. If you want to look again, long, very long rough, last 2 years. Long, very long golf courses, long rough, last 2 years. Get a sense of who was at the top of this again. Again, small sample for these other guys here. You're not going to get anything for them. But again, Hideki, Ludwig, Homa, Dietrich. Those guys are all in the top of the mix here. Same thing. We did the same thing here. Remember, we just took out the long rough. I want to show you some of the stats I didn't show you from a breakdown standpoint. We looked at, we did not look at POA or the fast green putting. So again, I have scrambling in here for a little bit as well. This is putting on fast greens last 2 years. You can see here. Again, this is without POA. This is just any surface, fast greens. How do you control your speed? You can see Finau and Gary Woodland do not. Taylor Montgomery, Harris English, Max Gracerman, Hayden Springer, Thomas Dietrich, Alejandro Tosti, Ben Griffin, Ludwig, Bridgman, Homa, Jason Day are your kind of top of the board on fast greens. You can see here some of the guys that also putt well on POA. And again, California POA, not POA Triv like we had last week. Again, I'll go back. I should look at this too, looking at the bottom of the board. Matthew Pavon. Small sample for Pavon, obviously, but he got it done here, the winner last year. Homa, Springer, Montgomery, Peter Malnati, S.H. Kim, Matt McNeely, Toasty again, Day, Akshay. Akshay spent a lot of time on the West Coast, North Carolina kid, but this makes sense as well. Akshay's putted well on the POA. So again, you want to look at the putting. This is what, again, weighing it small, collectively 10%, but splitting up between fast and POA. So hopefully that helps you. Hopefully that has led you guys to some names that you would consider this week. Again, I've already made a couple of bets, and probably not super surprising to see those guys that were in maybe the top 20 consistently. Again, put those out for our subscribers over at Betsperts Golf. We'll write that up later today and have it posted tomorrow. But again, we put those first plays early in the morning, Monday, for subscribers. And again, you want to subscribe and tail plays. We have that too. But also, if you want to dig into this data, again, golf is more fun to we're trying to do the teach a man to fish situation here, where we're really trying to help you think through the data that helps you land confidently on players that you like. If you want to go into our view expert ranking section, let me show you this real quick. If you're watching for the first time, I want to make sure you can see this. You can click on that. Let me show you where it was real quick. On the rabbit hole, view expert rankings. If you click into this, you can get lots of other folks' models as well. You want to get my model, Andy Lack here. You can see Steve is part of Andy's team over at Inside Sports Network. You'll see more models. Some of these will go away. Matt Vicenzi, Sports Illustrated Tap It In podcast. Matt also on SEP last week. Congrats, Matt. His model will be up, I'm sure, later this morning. So you can see Joe I, Tour Picks, at Tour Picks, another SEP winner last week. Shout out to Joe. You can get his model every week. So again, it's the way to do it. Tap in, see what other people are doing, see the stats that people are doing and using, and then that can help you lead and build your own models as well. Again, or you can just look through other people's models. You can download any of them into a CSV. Again, if you're typically you're good on Excel, you can take multiple models, and then you can weigh those models in a different way and start to build your own just by kind of accumulating different expert models. So again, any questions on the rabbit hole, you can reach out directly. There are multiple tutorials on the site. You can see here a very basic overview that I did that probably needs an update because it is a year old. We've added so much more to the rabbit hole. In the meantime, right here under tutorials, you can click this. Ron's popped out a few here over the last couple of months that you can watch as well. So check it out. If you have any questions, let me know. We appreciate you hanging out. Again, subscribe wherever you listen or watch before you take off. Betsperts Golf on YouTube, Betsperts Golf wherever you listen to podcasts. Come back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern for Andy and I. We'll do our betting show. We'll build another model. All right. Thanks.